so good to have you here. This is an impromptu meeting between my friend Araba and an intention that we developed in conversation and decided to record about perfectionism. But first, let me introduce Araba as my friend, my co-conspirator in life, my spiritual partner, uh, mentor, co-facilitator, and brilliant inspiration in my life. And we're going to have a professional bio for you at the end with the email. But I want to tell you two things. And then I want Araba to tell you why she is writing the book she is writing and how she comes to be an expert in reformulating a way to do parenting that makes us conscious and allows children to have their power. It's quite revolutionary. And you have to know her background before you can step into her wisdom. So, Araba, tell us a little bit about how you got to be the expert in sharing the responsibility of raising children. Tell us what happened in your life. Where did you start? You are a doctor, you're a PhD, you're a researcher. Take it from there.
Okay. First, I'd like to say thank you so much, Rosalind. Of course, you are all those things to me and more. And I love having conversation with you. So I was a rising star in academic medicine. I have a master's in public health. I did work with sickle cell. I had an NIH grant. I was on expert panels, and everything looked amazingly wonderful. And one day, my children, age 4 and age 2, were sick home, and I picked them up out of the bathtub, and my life changed. I pretty much almost fell to the floor, crawled back to my room, and over the next few months, by 4 months later, I had to leave my job and go on disability. Short-term disability turned into long-term disability, and surgery after surgery. And the challenge was I have young children and I couldn't pick them up and I couldn't like touch them because I was in so much pain. I was just in such debilitating pain. And I'd gotten to the point where I just wasn't sure this life was worth it, worth it, right? But I kept
How
getting,
close did you come? I've heard you say that a number of times, and I think people wonder, how close did you come? That sounds like suicidal ideation in psychological terms. How
yes.
close did you come to taking your life? Did you have a plan ever? Were you just depressed?
So I do have a history of depression. Um, I have been at the point of taking my life multiple times in my life. And the first time that concern really resurfaced, I'll say, when I was a teen, when I was in college, it happened. Um, and I did have a plan, but it didn't work. So, uh, but when I was pregnant with my daughter, my firstborn, I started having pain. That was the first experience of pain I had during my pregnancy. And it was so severe and I was getting so affected by it that I was actually taking narcotics while pregnant and seeing psychiatry at the same time. I know how I am, how when it gets to that place, I am literally holding myself from acting and I know to reach out for help. So the instance I'm talking about, I remember it very clearly. I was outside the night before with a knife laying in my driveway, like, and my friend talked me through the night until I could calm down because I didn't want my children to have the legacy of coming downstairs and finding me. So my children really anchored me to wanting to stay in this life. And even though I couldn't do a lot of things because of the multiple surgeries and I'd be in bed, sometimes I'd be wheelchair bound, they just loved me. They loved mom. And I gave all. I was fully present with them, right? And we found ways to stay connected. I developed a very deep trust with them, and I had to, or I chose to, because I wanted, because might not physically be there, I wanted them to know I was always there. And I had to make it a safe place for them to share whatever was going on.
How did
And
you do that?
how did
What
I
do
do
you
that?
mean by a safe place? Did you have to get rid of your suicidal ideas in order to be safe, or tell us more?
Yes. So what I have found is when I get to that place of I'm considering or I feel like I'm going to act on it, I reach out and I get support. There are times I've had to be on watch and talk to hotlines and work with my therapist. I think what happens then is when I can get either pain relief or I also get psychological support, mental health support, that those two things together work very deeply because, my entire life I wanted to be a doctor. And then I did that. And then who am I?
Mhm.
And who am I feeling broken?
Yeah, Arba, I want to just put a little bookmark in here because this is such a gift to people. I know you're on to talk about your gifts now and what you're contributing. But there are so many people who look at you, and not just your certifications and your degrees, but just the air of competence and beauty and uh, just whatever energy you put off, that we receive and make up stories about you. And then, well, our stories aren't you. Our stories come from what we're imagining you are. And that you would say to us with so much comfort, it's not the facts that you have been suicidal. It's not the fact that you needed help, but it's how you're talking about it now. We get the energy that you're not ashamed of it and it didn't make you less. You're just describing this the same way you described the pain of taking them out of the tub, and then you couldn't do it. You had, and thankfully your husband was home. uh, the other question, when I've heard this scenario before, that people ask, I know the answer because you're my friend, but people want to know, well, what was the diagnosis? There was that in college, and that was the pregnancy, but then you couldn't lift them. And then 9 surgeries or 11 surgeries, or it's so many, I can't even remember. It's maybe up to 13. But what was the diagnosis? And does it keep changing?
Yeah, so initially, no one could really account for why I was having the pain that I was having. They suspected it was my back. And in the end, I have what's called a chronic nerve root. I'm going to use regular words, a nerve root chronic pain condition. And I do have degenerative disc disease in my back. So I have a couple slip discs and I do get sciatica as well. So the various I have 9 surgeries. And the various surgeries, the first surgery was because they thought um, maybe it was my fibroids causing this pain that they couldn't account for. Then they thought maybe it was, X, Y, and Z. I did test after test. I saw specialist after specialist. I got fired from physical therapy. That's what I call it. Um, Probably 10 therapists, over time. But what really shifted for me was one, having a reason, right, to still be going through all of this. And the love I received, I remember being at church with my kids, and a woman said, I love every Sunday because I know that I'm going to get a hug. And I had no concept of like not being able to touch or hug or have a kiss or express love. And that seemed very shocking to me until I realized how blessed I was, and the blessing being that I got to be home with my children. I got to know them as more than what I thought they should be.
Yeah, so Araba's given me permission to intervene now and then. And this is a point that I've always wanted to speak of. So for all of you who are Enneagram people, Araba is a very efficient, effective, uh, acclaimed 3 on the Enneagram. She's a high performer. She's excellent at doing. You know that from all of her credentials. And I love this point. When I wrote to Araba, you're the perfect person to have all this happen to. I wrote that to you yesterday, I think. And I don't know if you know what I meant. Did you know what I meant by that?
Uh, no, well, I'll say no because I don't know what was going in your mind, and I'd love to
So
hear.
what I meant by that is I know you know it to a degree, but I am so touched by what I get from your children when you couldn't do anything. So for a 3 on the Enneagram, and if you don't know the Enneagram, it doesn't matter. You know doers in your life. They get more done than you ever can, unless you're a 3 too, and then you still think they're better because threes compare. So, but there she is, working, 2 children, 2 small children, on panels, specialists, all this stuff. And there you are, you can't do a thing. You can only be. You can only be and take the lessons, however much you could take them at one time. And you've had multiple opportunities with all of these surgeries to go back to being nothing, doing nothing, and learn to walk again each time or almost every time, and so on. So for our listeners, can you get with what I'm experiencing, Araba? Can you hear it from my point of view? There you are with an opportunity to know that your gift is just in being. It's actually not even in the hug. It's not even in the listening. It's actually even deeper than that. You are there in energy. It's because a hug and a listening sounds another version of doing in the
Oh,
beginning. Do you see how I'm taking it even deeper into how we connect beyond anything we do? It's an energy. And that's why I say, who better than you to teach the rest of us that lesson? Because Araba's not the only one who needs it. It's not just threes who need to know that our value is not determined by what we do. Yes, the world can use researchers, and yes, we all benefit by the creation of an iPhone. But in the end, you're going to need another iPhone. You're going to need another thing. The, the, the satisfying enoughness does not come from doing, and every single person needs that. We don't believe it because our world doesn't teach that. Our world teaches you are what you've accomplished. What have you done lately? Right?
Right. Well, when you're in bed and you're in pain and you are seeking oblivion just to feel like you can breathe, those things don't really mean a whole lot. I think for a long time, my kids didn't even know all the things that I had done in my life because
Right.
it
And they
wasn't,
wouldn't matter to them when they were little.
yeah. As they got older, they were like, you did
Ooh,
all these things? And I'm like, yes. And what I knew to be true is that all the other people in my life, they saw my life as having fallen, right? And having smashed apart, broken. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's just so terrible. And with my kids, I was just mom. Like I was there, that presence, and I was engaged with them. And I was kind of like in awe because we'd talk and they'd say something and it'd be like, oh my gosh, you're so wise. And so it became a place where they knew me in my wholeness simply from being with them. And
and that is another huge lesson that we all have had to learn or not learn is acceptance of the now. It doesn't mean you agree with it, but for your children, you were totally the now. They weren't like before or future, like they were in the now. Such amazing teaching that we all need. I mean, I got it from Melissa's dying, and your children got it from what you gave them by just not fighting anymore what you couldn't control. If you had spent the whole time they were with you going, why did this happen? It shouldn't have happened. What did I do? What's wrong? Try and second guess the doctors. Are they giving me the right pain? I mean, you had all the tools to lay there fighting it all. I'm sure you did a little of that, but if you had done that the whole time the kids were with you, it would be a different ending.
yeah, and for me, I see their beginning, right? I watch them step into their power. I watch them, but I want to take one step back and say thank you. And I'd like to say that my children taught me that I was important, that presence, right? That my being was important. And then I found A Course in Miracles. And that really affirmed that it didn't matter if I felt like I was a broken body. I had a function and I had a purpose and I could love. And that was a revelation. But that gave me so much joy to think I'm working in the invisible and I experience the energy of healing
Mm.
when I came in that. And I also became a spiritual counselor because I wanted to hold the light for people who could not see themselves clearly, just like the
Yeah.
children
And
have.
I knew you when you were in a wheelchair. And last September, we got to visit, and there was a whole art show of beautiful women, and Araba was one of African American women, African women, and it was extraordinary. And no question, of course, you could walk. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think for me, when I started on this journey and CBT was sort of the first line therapy. And for a thinker, you just go round and round. I just couldn't find that very helpful. For my children, I also we were very clear, my husband and I, we wanted to give them a background in faith. So I became much more active in my church and really developed my relationship with God. And that, I believe, is also a saving grace. I began to have a community of people supporting me, bringing my family food, taking me to appointments for years. So community, we can't do this alone. And I discovered that I could be anywhere in distress and help would always come.
I love this story. When you would fall on the street and people you didn't know always helped.
Always did.
Yeah.
It
I
was,
wish we all knew that we weren't and didn't have to do this alone. It's such a, we have all this social media and we're talking all day long if we want to be, but it's not that connection where you have someone you can check on. I know someone, this is just a parenthesis, but if this is you, there's a way you can shift this. Someone I know feels very rooted to where she lives, but she had a big surgery and there was no one local. She felt she could ask for help.
hmm,
And if that feels true for you, whoever is listening, I ask you, have you given anyone the chance to help you? Have you asked, could you do this or that for me? Some of us would rather die, literally, than ask for help. And so we can shift this. We don't need to have what Araba had or what this person with the surgery believed about her community. We can shift that idea right now. Look for an opportunity if you would like to change this and ask someone. The worst they can say is no. But the best is you could find out people would love to help you if they knew. And they would be honored to be in your inner world.
that's a hard lesson for a doer. Yeah, part of the doing is to avoid the vulnerability of needing to ask for help. Um, and yes, I love that you're encouraging whoever's listening who may feel at a place where things are very difficult and challenging for them. I would love to encourage you that it is worth it, because what I found was the more loving I could be, and give people the opportunity to show up, they wanted that opportunity to give too, just like I wanted to give. And so when we are in flow, that really kind of taught me about flow and how I can change things right now just by shifting my mind.
And giving people something specific, like,
Oh, yeah.
if your car isn't working, instead of getting an Uber or, you could ask someone for a ride. If it's something specific, if it's not that, pick something. But if you identify as that super independent, quote unquote, because I don't think that's real independence, that's counter independence or defensive independence.
Yes, defensive.
But yeah, pick something and just experiment. And then tell the person, I really was going to take an Uber, but I would like to bring you into a give and take. I would like to be there for you. And not as a transaction, like you have to help me because I helped you, but where we're in that inner world where we can give and receive.
So important.
So now take us. take us to your children getting older and how you learned the child rearing openings that are in your books, that are in your classes, that are in your communication.
Yes. I feel that I feel very blessed that, and I feel that God very intentionally gave me these children as life-saving and life-changing opportunities to really learn to love myself. I know that now, but at the time I didn't. What I did know was that I loved my children. I felt wonderful giving love and I received love from them. And as I began to heal and train to be a spiritual counselor, I started noticing the discrepancy in my spiritual life and in my child rearing. And that didn't feel good.
Like what? What do you mean? Give us an example.
So, I'm telling us about being in flow and caring for yourself, asking, receiving, and then I'm trying to do everything for everybody all the time. I'm exhausted, I'm in pain, and then I'm blowing up, and it's like, what is happening? I'm
Growing up meaning angry?
angry, upset. I tend did not to do anger. Anger never felt very safe for me. So I would get upset, I would say, sad, I guess it is angry, but people don't usually think of irritation or resentment or those things as anger, even though they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
So what I noticed there was this discrepancy, and I remember very clearly when a counselor saying, we're wearing these hats, but what's important ends up being we have one hat, right? And being aligned became so important to me. My thoughts, my words, and my actions coming in alignment. It's a priority.
So explain some more for our listeners who don't know what you mean by we have one hat.
Okay. So a 3 on the Enneagram is excellent at being what you need to be in whatever situation you need them to be. And it's not even a conscious thing that you do, but I would say I had lots of compartments where I'm this person here, I'm this here, and I'm here. And what I came to know, if I want to know my wholeness, is I have to be wholly me wherever I am.
So you have to not be in any role in order to be you, because
Correct.
it's not our roles. We stop being a teacher or a
Doctor or
taxi driver,
yeah.
doctor, whatever it is. That we tend, that's very important. How many of us are identified with our roles? And at the end of the day, when people are ready to leave the world, what is it that they think of? It's not the roles, it's how they interacted as the one hat with the people they love.
And so for me, seeing that I was causing distress for the people I loved, didn't, it just hurt my heart.
It's a
Uh,
deal breaker, it's a deal changer. When we take that in, very often we spend a lot of time thinking of and feeling about how we're treated by others. And we miss how through defense, it's usually a defense. There's some hurt or tiredness or pain underneath. For example, if we just listen to Araba, like why would she be short with her children? It's not because she didn't love them. It's because she was in pain and probably hadn't eaten and probably,
you
hadn't
know me so well.
taken care of herself and is frantic. So the giving and receiving have to be part of the channel, or we cannot be in the flow if either one of those is closed off.
And I was still learning that. But what I did know is that it didn't feel good to see, the pain in my children's eyes and then feel guilty. And that energy is expending so much energy. People kind of are like, well, that's parenthood, but it's too much of our life energy. It's just not necessary. But a lot of us didn't know that because that's not how we were raised.
Yeah, we're raised with this idea that parents do everything, and it's parents' responsibility. This is one of the things I got out of the watching you on a video podcast yesterday, and we're going to put that podcast in the show notes here today, so people who want to hear more that's very current can pick up a replay of that. But I really heard you yesterday say you just couldn't do it all. So it finally occurred to you that the responsibility of their upbringing needed to be shared with them, and that it could be. It was like, that is brilliant for all of us. We don't have to be flat out unable to see that point of view. Did I have that right? Do you want to tweak that at all, what I said?
I would, in part, I would say that as I discovered that discrepancy and wanted to close the gap, I asked my children to partner with me. So as I was learning spiritual principles, as I was learning about the Enneagram, my children were learning about it. As I learned skills in doing dialectical behavior therapy, like emotion regulation or distress tolerance, my children were learning that. And so it just occurred to me, why do we wait until people are in distress to teach these very basic life skills that everybody needs? Radical acceptance, um, so many things. So the gift was I shared my learning. My children grew up with that learning, and I saw things begin to change as I took ownership for my own healing.
How did it change? Tell us something concrete.
Okay, so at the time, a little bit later, my husband and I were separated, and we included our children in the whole process. And I recall one afternoon, we were coming home from church, the kids and I in one car, my husband was in another car. And I said, we're going to have a family meeting. And they kind of knew, they knew. And my son said, I said, yeah, probably this is, what we're going to be talking about. We'll wait till everyone's here. And he says to me in the back of the car, he's like, aren't you supposed to make us happy?
Oh, wow.
To speak to your point, right? And I laughed and I said, no, honey, that's not my job. My job is to make sure that you have the opportunity to become an adult, a happy, moral, productive, which is their school motto, adult, that you can take care of yourself. So there's that thing about us giving, giving, giving. So I wanted to mention that. But as I was doing my spiritual work, I learned to say, this kind of interaction doesn't work for me. I can't navigate that. So the best way to communicate with me is text. I can't do these emails. Calls were not working for us. So being able to be very clear about the
So you're
communication.
talking about other people. You're not saying have your children text you.
No, no, no.
You're saying you're getting more truthful and being honest about your limitations and your needs,
Yeah,
saying, I can't do all these long emails, please text me.
exactly. Things like that to begin to,
Be
I would
honest.
say, be honest. Yeah. Instead of trying to people please and bend over, because I felt I had to guard my peace.
Yeah.
And I would talk to my children because they'd be fighting in the morning. And I said, look, this energy of conflict and the yelling and the upset, I used to take it all in. And my body hurts when I'm in that kind of a state. So these are the things I need. I started asking my children to, if you need something from me, the best time is going to be here, not here. My
And I want to say, interrupt you here, because this is such great story that we can all dip into. And there I had said a minute ago, you are being honest. But before we can be honest with other people, we have to be honest with ourselves, right? And that's a new step that I can hear you taking in that period. Like, you have to say, oops, I'm talking in a way it's not aligned. What's wrong? Oh, I'm taking in the fighting, or I haven't had anything to eat, or the pain is too much. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. We can all identify. But without that step of observing, we don't have to know, oh, it was my father who said this when I was, we don't need to have the analysis. We just have to stay current with ourselves, with the intention of being responsible, not saying you made me. No, they didn't make you. That was your response to whatever they were doing. And so those are key, but right before
yeah,
anything's going to change with anybody, if we've taken responsibility, it's so much easier for them to join us and be partners.
absolutely. I
We're-
taught my children how to say, please forgive me, because I was willing to go first, right? Um, I remember my car was in the shop and Kofi picked me up and
That's
took,
your husband.
yes, um, my life partner, this is what I call him now, because we're not married anymore, but
To
we
me,
are life.
you'll always be married in a certain way, but
Exactly, we're life partners and we're co-partners, and we're grateful for that. So he took me, and later he says to me, I'm so sorry. And I'm confused what he's apologizing for. And he's like, I was really cranky and I was upset and I was irritated this morning. And I hadn't even noticed it. It just, it was like because I wasn't taking everything personally. It was me, and what did I do? And, oh,
uh,
you shouldn't act like that to me. And like,
uh,
I had finally gotten to that place where I wasn't even kind of involved in all of what was going on with someone else's upset. And that was like, this stuff works.
so let's put a breather in there. So when we're making up a story, we don't know it's a story, but we're coming to conclusions about what other people are doing. Maybe it's a story. Maybe it has nothing to do with us. Maybe we need to ask, or maybe we need to let it go until it comes up as something real. To just put a question mark, I have found has been life changing rather than assuming I'm right because of the story I've intruded into the situation. My lens, just even saying my lens, everybody has a lens, right? We don't know that at certain stages. We don't know we're singing through pink, blue, yellow, green, whatever. And it's going to look different if you put your lens on that your lens, my lens and your lens are going to be different.
And learning that, particularly as you're raising your children, is so important because they are sovereign beings. They come here with that and a life journey, and we're partners on that journey. That's what I found to be true because I was judging especially one of my children who seems very different from the like do, and the intellectual, he's just different. And I used to judge how he would go from this activity to that. It had a certain meaning for me until I learned about the Enneagram and I learned about the agreements, and it was like, oh, this is how he navigates what's going on with him, his energy, by doing all these different things. It is not that, oh, you don't finish anything because you just are lazy or you don't. It's the, oh, I need to stimulate. I want to stimulate myself in all these different ways. And so I could take that narrative out of the equation and not have, right? And not be like, ah, I'm doing
Yeah,
this.
because he's not like you and your daughter. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, he's a 7 on the Enneagram. Everybody who does know the Enneagram, he identified himself. How old was he when he said that's me, mommy?
so let's see, it would have been around 28, 17, 18. So he's 9, 9,
About
10.
9. Can you believe it that he was so clear? That is me. That isn't who he really is. That is how
No.
he operates. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's shorthand that we say that's me and that's
right. I'm
this, but
glad you said that.
it's incorrect languaging. Yeah.
But you taught me, in doing Enneagram work with you, Rosalind, that knowing sort of those ways that we try to operate in the world, um, when you can see that separately, then you can really focus on the essence of a person or your own essence. And, as I watch my daughter, she seems very much like me. She's my mini me, but 1,000 times better for her, for the next generation. So I would say, oh, I judge myself, right, for this. But through the lens of my daughter, I'm encouraging her to be kind to herself. And I'm doing that. And that again is that place where it was like, hmm, I am teaching one thing and I'm doing another thing. Those aren't aligned. Those aren't aligned.
So that takes us a little bit to the doorway of perfectionism. And uh, I know we don't have a lot of time, but I would like us to touch on this. How can, well, let me say before I ask this question, first of all, many people miss perfectionism because of the belief that perfectionists do things perfectly. That's what people believe until they study perfectionism. So perfectionists know they do almost nothing perfectly. And I want to simplify the whole thing and not even use the word perfectionism. How can we work with this impulse, this thought that tells us more is needed or we're not prepared yet? I heard you tell a story recently, just today, about the piano and staying up nights because you weren't prepared. Was it the piano that you weren't prepared? Yeah. And then being so exhausted that it didn't turn out well because you were tired and not physically ready. But I love that story because we believe the thought that you need more preparation. And that is actually not true most of the time. So if you were invited to speak 3 times recently, and my first thought was, I hope she speaks from the heart rather than notes. I've seen her both ways. She gives intellectually elegant speeches from notes. And it's not the same as when she just talks from the heart. I love that. Now, maybe it's because I'm a feeling type, but 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 if we just use that example, it would require you to know you are enough, not to write the notes.
Yeah.
And how do we get there? How do we even put a question mark when we say, no, it'll be better if I write it all out. Oh, no, it'll be, because we trust the mind, we trust the doing, we don't trust the heart as much. You would not be invited to give a talk if you could not deliver it in your sleep. Nobody wants to read the book version. They want you.
Cliff
They,
notes, please.
right? But how do we know that? How do we believe that? Is it enough to just put the question mark when we hear more is needed? I better do this, I better do that, better have notes, better have the, what do you call it when you have the notes on your computer and with a V, what's it
The
called?
teleprompter, like,
Teleprompter, not a
yeah.
V. Yeah. I mean, all of those things, this is just an example, but it could be anything in any of our listeners' lives where they are distorting their enoughness with the more. I need another degree, another credential, I need another, another. I have that. I'll tell you where I have it. I'm I'm actually a quiet person, and being on social media, doing all of this is not my nature. So I have an addiction to coffee. I believe that more coffee will give me the courage, give me the talking, and I don't think it's needed. I think connecting would maybe even be better, but I don't believe it. I believe I need the coffee.
Yeah, baby steps. I think you spoke to this a couple ideas that I just like to I heard you say that like, oh yeah, that. Um, the first thing is that I love going back to piano after 40 years of not taking it. I stopped
That
piano.
was 40, everyone, not 4. 4-0. Okay.
And the reason why I did it is because I bought a piano and my son decided he no longer wanted, he did it for 3 years and said, Mom, I think I'm done. And every time I'd walk by that piano, I'd get irritated. So I said, I'm going to take lessons. But my teacher is very much about the more I would, if I rush into the studio, it's slowing it down, right? He talks about how we have to play, but we can only use our muscles in the best way, in the where they can perform the best when we're in a relaxed state.
Oh.
And that, like, it really helped me begin to shift my energy of like, oh, okay. And he'd say, oh, put one hand down and just relax. And we do relax exercise for my hands. So this idea about more, 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 I think it's linked to the trust, right? And I learned that I can trust. I can show up, maybe not the way I'd like to, and my children will not take it personally that it's about them, and I can apologize and we just all move on. So moving out of, oh, I'm trying to be the perfect mom, to I'm trying to be mindfully loving, and I'm teaching my children to be mindfully loving because we are human. And I think that is a really important point. And I want to say that I had another piano recital, and this time I made sure I got rest beforehand. I learned to prepare under Charlie Brown, I'm sorry, under Lucy moments, not Charlie Brown. And for me, that just meant oh, the spotlight bothers me. Like, hmm, let's put a light on me while I'm playing so I can get used to that sensation, right? Let's put earplugs in so I'm not constantly trying to readjust. And that's part of what makes it difficult to play well. And it went so much better. I still made mistakes. And it was awesome because I enjoyed myself for the first time. And I feel like,
Oh, that's brilliant because you are brilliant. And you added something in our conversation in text today where you shared how people's mistakes in your listening did not disturb your enjoyment of their playing. So these are other students that are playing. And the whole time you were talking about trust, I was going to, yeah, but isn't it unworthiness? Because you don't trust when you feel unworthy. That cuts the trust thing. If you're into, I'm not good enough, there's no access to trust. Trust comes like higher level when you're off the question of worthy. It's not really, am I worthy or unworthy? It's not, it's going, not needing to go to that question at all. It's assumed you're good enough to be at a student concert with other students playing the piano. It's that perfectionism that says you have to be more than a student who's learning the piano. That's insanity. So, how do we get there? I think it comes down to not believing everything we think.
I remember a client said that to me. I said, I'm explaining Course in Miracles and we're talking about things, and they were like, oh, okay. I said, do you get it? Yeah. I shouldn't believe everything I think. And I
Yeah.
was like, that's brilliant.
No, really, because the thought doesn't hurt you. It's believing the thought and following up on that with actions. Like I need to do more and I can't show up. I don't have it fluent enough, or whatever the proper word is for the piano. I think we should leave our listeners with that. Where can you intervene? Because whether you label yourself as a perfectionist or not, I think everybody does self-harm through the more. And what I hear back from people when I first say that is, yeah, but excellence, isn't it good to be excellent? But joy and excellence are natural. They don't come from that drive to be more, which is a defense about not good enough. Is it not? Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And identifying yourself as a perfectionist, I really love that you said we're not going to use that word, because I would 100% every time somebody would say, "Oh, you didn't finish, you're not finished your book because you're a perfectionist." I'd say, "No, that's not it at all. It's not to the place where I'd like it to be, you know?" But then I learned I was waiting for something else for to be into it. But the idea of needing to do more, whether you call yourself a perfectionist or not, believing you need to do more to be more is
Not
a
necessary. No, no. What if we each had an observer that was completely neutral, that wasn't into the outcome, and like an assistant that just was inside our head and said, "Done enough," and now it is no more. But like perfectionists need, that's very irritating. But that is to break the mold of we're doing that, like need more. Then the finger goes away. No, you're enough. Relax. Fingers, whatever it takes, breath, a deep breath, whatever to come back to.
I was just gonna say I discovered a meditation and I did tapping too before it, and that helps center me so much more.
And the butterfly hug, let's just show the butterfly hug because that brings together tapping and EMDR. All you have to do is right, left, right, left. And if you've done any tapping, it brings back all of that soothing. But even if you haven't, it doesn't require knowing the meridian lines. And it right away, you can't keep up that belief in you're not enough when this is going on.
Well, I love that we had a chance to have a conversation. And when I had that realization, like, oh my goodness, everybody played beautifully. There was a note here or there, but
It was
I,
enough. It was enough to enjoy it.
it was so wonderful. I was like, oh, this is so
So
good.
it's not about mistakes, everyone. It's not about the not enough. It's right back to Araba's story, welcoming the being, not the form, not the form of doctor, researcher, not the form of doing, but the aliveness that was enough for her children. And now the rest of us have to see it's actually enough. We will be guided to the doing and the, but all we need to do is the gratitude for the being.
So beautiful. Thank you,
Thank you
Rosalind.
for visiting Araba. Send me your professional bio. Send me the links to the podcast you did yesterday. We'll put it all in the email.
Thank you so much. It was a joy and pleasure to be here with you, as it
I
always
know it's every moment. Thank you so much for coming.
is.
Bye.
Bye.